just like looking back, kind of like you even just bringing that up, it's pretty cool. Like my dad and my mom, they basically, wanted to have kids, and they're trying to have kids and realized they couldn't for some reason, and they adopted my sister from a private family, and the joke was always that they paid $5,000 for my sister. But of all things, one of my dad's buddies was watching TV, and there was a TV show called the Ben Hunter Show, and it was an afternoon show where they'd show like a black and white movie, but in the halftime they'd have kids on there for adoption. So of all things, my buddy's dad called my dad up and said, "Hey, you need to kind of look at this kid that is on the TV." So I guess my dad turned on the TV, and then I don't know how much longer, if it was that day or later on the next day or whatever, but he went down to the TV studio where I was. And the amazing thing was, is he always told me, there's a lot of kids there, and like he really liked me, my mom and my dad adopted me. And the funny thing is they paid $500 for me
Hmm.
on a TV show, and then lo and behold, after a while they ended up, they got pregnant with my brother Steve, and one thing that kind of stands out to me is, and I've been able to use this with quite a few other kids that have been adopted. I got quite a few friends, a lot of little guys or kids at church that have been adopted, or I kind of relate to them in certain ways, just of things that have happened. But my dad always just told me that everyone's stuck with who they have, but I was able to pick you. And later on down in my life, I think once I became a Christian, it kind of really spoke to me too that God can pick a lot of people, but he chooses a lot of people, but he chose me to serve him. And it's just been pretty amazing, being a Christian for quite a few years. Wasn't a Christian, growing up. I kind of had it, not, I wouldn't say too rough, but my mom and dad actually, when I was 5 years old, and my mom actually went and had an affair on my dad. And I kind of remember, guys coming over, or a guy coming over when I was younger while my dad was at work. And, I really didn't pay much attention. But, after a while, it was announced to us kids that my parent that they were getting divorced. And we ended up moving from a little town on Orange County and LA border, La Mirada, California. We moved to Azusa, California. It's where Azusa Pacific College is. Really good college there, and good memories riding my bike around there as a kid. But of all things, this guy moved my mom into the driveway of his house where he was still married to his wife, and his mistress and three kids were living in a trailer. And it wasn't the best of times once I kind of realized, once I got older and started seeing things, what was actually kind of going on. And me having a birthmark and just being the I don't know, the laugh of the block, and people just picking on me. It wasn't the funnest. One thing I'm kind of like really grateful for is that my mom, after a while, her and her new husband, they said they couldn't handle me anymore, and that they were going to send me to some type of, they were going to adopt me again. They were going to put me up for adoption again, basically. And my dad, who my dad is, was like, "You're out of your mind. You're not doing anything." And my dad actually picked me up, and I moved with my dad. And during that time, my dad had like a really nice house in La Mirada, and but he chose to let his sister stay there with all her kids, and that's some pretty amazing stories with my Aunt Kathy. But I remember moving to my grandma's house with my dad in Norwalk, and then my grandma moved to the desert, and that was actually on the border of Arizona and California on the Colorado River. And I just had a lot of awesome stories, fishing on the river. But one of the coolest things I think that happened to me is my dad, he's working a union job, a forklift driver at McDonnell Douglas Aircraft in Long Beach, California. and he had to work night shift, and he was in a situation where he figured it out for quite a few years, where just babysitters would watch me, or different situations that probably weren't the best, but my dad did his best, where I had to go and live with my grandma actually while he worked the night shift. And during that time with my grandma, even before I had to go move to my grandma's, we'd do vacation Bible school, and we'd go just to a little Baptist church, and it was amazing just being a part of vacation Bible school, doing certain things. And then one thing that was really awesome that just still means the most to me is when I went to church and they started picking me up. They had a contest that if I'd show up 10 weeks in a row, that I'd get a Bible. And I did. I showed up for 10 weeks and I got the Bible. And I wasn't reading the Bible. I wasn't really, didn't know too much about the Lord, but it meant a lot to me. And it was like one of the first true accomplishments of my life was like showing up for 10 weeks in a row. And it was pretty awesome. And, I didn't really, believe it or not, my mom, she kind of wanted to still kind of do her thing and actually party and just, didn't really want to be responsible for me or basically my sister or brother. And my mom actually had my brother and sister move in with my dad after a few years. And I ended up moving back with my dad when he went to day shift, and my brother and my sister came to the house, and we moved back to La Mirada. And, that's when, my teenage years kind of started, and
things didn't necessarily get better.
No, not at all. They didn't get better. I was, pretty much not a troublemaker, but me and my brother were pretty much always in trouble, doing different things and starting fights. And as my sister worked in the office, I've said this before, me and my brother were in the discipline office sitting there.
Well, let me introduce you, Mike, before we go much further. You got an amazing testimony and a witness to share. And welcome to the Snyder Family Podcast. We believe that strong families create strong communities. And today we have a guest on, Mike Jewell. And, some people grow up in homes that are, same family, and other grow up in mixed families. And Mike happened to be adopted, and he had a great story, if you caught the beginning of it, where he was on TV at 2 weeks old, and his dad picked him out and brought him home and loved on him. And we're just making kind of a transition to these adolescent years, and he's going to tell us some of the stories that led him to a new life around age 20. And then after that, we're going to listen to hear him talk about how he has a great family today. How did that all happen? So let's go back to this adolescent years. 13 years old. This is about where we're at.
I was about 13 years old, and my brother was about 12, and we just lived kind of like a pretty wild life. It was a little different back then in the 70s and 80s, 90s. What I remember is a 12, 13-year-old, we'd jump on the bus, and we'd drive about an hour and 20 minutes. And we'd get dropped off at Long Beach Arena, and we'd go to all kinds of heavy metal concerts and different shows. And going to those shows and just being, around just a lot of drugs and alcohol, that was just something that I started at a young age. And it wasn't really probably the best, because my cousins and their friends were using, and it was just something that I just thought I could do, and I did. And it really kind of led to some, I don't know, not the greatest times. My friends at one time, when I was about 18, when I graduated from high school, I actually was up probably for like 4 or 5 days from using crystal meth.
Wow.
But I've known people that have been up and used quite a bit. And I graduated from high school, barely. But, during that time of just probably 2 or 3 years of my friends making crystal meth and just, not really the best situation, I just was kind of lost. I remember one time that I was just really struggling, and I was just crying. My dad, he kind of knew things were up because we'd get in trouble. You know, we get caught at school for smoking, you know, marijuana, and I got kicked out of school for it. And um, but I just remember one time when it was pretty bad, just using, you know, speed. And I just remember crying one night and just telling my dad that I was just addicted, man. And like, and my dad was just really, he just hugged me. He didn't really know what to do. And, you know, there's quite a few times when I was younger, he didn't know what to do, but maybe it was the right thing for him to do. Just listen to me and be there for
Oh,
me.
it's huge. It shows humility and love and
Yeah.
commitment to you.
Yeah. He was awesome. Like my dad, he never like, even though like my brother was not adopted, like my dad was just, I never felt that I was adopted. He just treated me so well. So yeah, it was kind of amazing. There was times in my life where I knew, like when I was younger, going to church when I was younger. But then even when I was a little older, I remember, you know, drinking quite a bit on a trip and going on a mountain, man, and talking to God. And it was just kind of an awesome experience where I just told God to like have the wind blow stronger. And it was a pretty amazing thing that happened. Like I literally was blown off my feet, man, on the ground. And the next day, you know, we were cleaning our guns and drinking some more beer. And I just had the urge, like the desire that I was going to quit drinking. And it kind of helped that I was actually trying to like get in shape and work out. Um, and, you know, I just quit drinking. And so that was kind of like the beginning of just me kind of like figuring out my life a little bit.
I know you've said in some of the conversations we've had off the recording here, you talked about these little things that would happen, and you could
Yeah.
tell God was with you, like blowing you off your
Yeah.
feet, being with
Yeah.
your grandpa, and then young
Yeah.
life at church with your grandma, and
Yeah.
all these little discipling moments that God was leading you.
That was the whole thing because when I actually accepted Christ, I had no doubt that God was real. There was a gentleman who was pretty awesome. Like I I was looking for a job. Um, that's a whole nother story. But I was just looking for a job, and I got picked up at this truck, U.S. Express truck company, unloading and loading trucks. And I remember I was just really just I had um, a whole story of just basically of a Chevelle that I had that I wrecked it. I didn't really know how to drive it. I wrecked this car, and I just remember I was riding to work and getting in shape. And there's a gentleman who actually just wanted to have me go to church, and they're having a day called Friends Day, and I just remember that that I really didn't want to go that day because I didn't want to just be some, you know, guest of this guy bringing me to this church. And so I told the guy that I'd show up a week before, and I showed, you know, he came, he picked me up, went to church. It's pretty amazing. They were taking communion, and I wasn't going to take that communion at all. I knew that like for me to take a communion, I had to be like pretty serious and, you know, give my life to the Lord in my conviction. Even though I wasn't serving the Lord, I just knew better. And you know, when I just remember them all getting in a circle and praying and singing, and you know, the Holy Spirit, you know, told me to go take that communion. I took it, and my whole life was changed after that.
Was that after you wrecked your Chevelle?
Yeah, like that's a whole like another story I can say real quick. So like, there was a time when when my buddy, he basically got out of jail, and he sold his car to this gentleman, but the guy wasn't making payments, and like I really wanted to buy it. It was like it was the best car in the neighborhood basically. And I remember us going to go repo it, to go take it back. I remember we showed up in front of this guy's house to take it, and we couldn't get it started. We tried, you know, everything. He had a key for it. It wouldn't click over. We're looking for switches. No switches. Couldn't find anything. So we literally threw the car in neutral and drove it or rolled it down a half mile down the street. And then we ended up doing another half mile past the police station into the 7-Eleven. And I remember us trying to hotwire this car, and then the cops showing up and me going to jail. and my buddy going to jail, and I got released because I was like wanting to buy the car technically, but it was pretty awesome. But I ended up buying the car for my buddy because he had to go back to jail, and I ended up buying the car. But the cool thing was is my dad told me, that I'd probably end up crashing that car, and I sure enough did. Within a month, I didn't even have a license yet. Yeah.
But you had bought the car half with money you worked at a store, right?
Yeah, like no, like I actually purchased that car. Well, my friends were cooking crystal meth, and here's a story. I remember one day I went to my friend. We were painting cars in high school, and I was learning how to paint cars. And I didn't really realize how big of a drug dealer my other friend was. But my one friend that was making crystal meth, he like needed 10 pounds of a certain chemical called ephedrine. And my buddy was having a hard time getting that chemical. And so I remember going to one of my other friends, ask him, hey, do you know like this chemical called ephedrine? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, you do? And he's like, yeah. I said, my friend needs some. And he's like, okay. So literally, I was at my buddy's house like the next day, and my friend just shows up, and he knocks on the door, and he's like, hey, what's up? And he goes, can I come in? And my buddy let him inside the house. He searched the whole house to make sure that nobody was there. And he goes, I got 10 pounds of ephedrine if you want it. And he went out to his car, under the hood, grabbed it, came back in, tested to see if the chemical was the right one. It wasn't the right one. He left and went got 10 pounds of a different kind, came back, and it was the right stuff. But through that deal, I made like, I made like 3,000. I think I made like $1,800, and then there was another amount that I was supposed to receive, but I never did. The amazing thing was is once I kind of changed, my life was changing a little bit, and I was driving my car around, and it was an awesome car, but I remember crashing it. I hit three trees at lunchtime, at nighttime. I didn't even have a license. I had a permit, and I just remember smashing this whole car. When I look back at it, though, I think I could have fixed it now. But back then, when I was kind of younger, I just thought, and the technology was a little different with body work and stuff. But I remember, of all things, this is kind of like, I just want to be sensitive about this, but like, once I got saved, my buddy, because I ended up getting a job at McDonnell Douglas painting airplanes. And I remember a guy just telling me, hey, man, I don't know if the Catholic Church, if it's really going to like fit your style. And I was like, dude, I'm saved, man. It doesn't really matter like what kind of church you go to or whatever. And he's like, no, I just think that you should, maybe not go there. I'm like, nah. And you know what? I ended up selling my transmission, the rear end, and the motor for literally like 900. I think it was like $1,800, and the money I literally made on the parts that I sold was the money that I actually worked a job for, and the rest of the money I lost was all drug money.
So let me get this right. You had mentioned earlier you tithed some of that money to the church, right? Uh-huh. But the money that you recouped out of the sale of the crashed car, the only portion that you received back was money that you had earned.
Yeah.
The money from the drug deal was never given to you. That's amazing.
Yeah. And the cool thing is like, it was like God kind of like showing me from even when I was like younger that he kind of like had his hands on me. And I didn't really understand it. There's been a couple of situations that I've had in my life. I remember one time another situation, when I got saved at that truck company, they like some of the other religions were coming out to try to disciple me. And I remember this gentleman who was a part of the Mormon church, he was all excited to convert me. And I was really kind of confused of, which way I should go, because I was on fire for the Lord when I first got saved. And, and it's not that certain churches are right or wrong, but I was just looking for direction. And I was just so young in the Lord. And I remember one time that this gentleman actually gave me a Mormon Bible. And I was like, all right. And I remember reading it a little bit and praying to see if I should go to their church or not. And then my cousin was like, yeah, it's a good church. It's a good doctrine, basically. And I basically remember taking the Book of Mormon and setting it by my plant. And literally the next day my plant was dead.
That's crazy.
And it spoke to me big time, just that, that maybe that wasn't the place where I should go. So I've had like a lot of different things that showed up in my life that have really helped me, guide me in my walk with God, because I didn't really know much at the beginning.
And that's what it is. We learn as we go. You've been discipled before you became a believer by God, leading you into it. And now from a young adult to your marriage and child, tell us about that journey, because you had kind of an interesting growing up. You could call it rough, not terribly rough, but rough.
Yeah.
You come to Christ, and now you come and you're raising a wonderful family.
Yeah.
Tell us about that from age 20 forward.
When I first got saved when I was 20, and then I actually would go to this conference every year in Arizona, Phoenix First Assembly, and there was just some really amazing ministry and teaching that would go there. And I remember I wanted to go to the school called Master's Commission.
Yeah.
And I remember me being kind of not as quick in school as some other kids that would take me a little longer to learn stuff. I remember trying to debate, like, man, should I go to the school? And I really wanted to go. My heart was set on it. I was a little older. I was like 22, 23 after I got saved. And I didn't know if they wanted a little older people to go. But I just remember that I knew that I was going to have to like really study and like make it serious. And so I applied for the school. And so I didn't get accepted. And I was bummed. And I got accepted to go to North Carolina to a program that was called Master's Commission. So once I found out that I got accepted to that, I just kind of was praying a little bit. And I kind of felt the Lord tell me if I go there, I'd be there by myself. That if I went, I'd be by myself. And like I literally just said, I'm not going to go. I didn't go. And like a month later, there was a hurricane that came where the school was, and the whole school got shut down. And it was, thinking back now, it would have been an awesome opportunity to go there after a hurricane. But I was so young in the Lord, I just didn't really understand a lot of things. But God's kind of guided me on a few things. But the reason why I bring that up is because after I felt the Lord telling me, hey, you're going to be by yourself, the Phoenix church actually committed to start a church 20 minutes away from my church where I got saved.
Wow.
So like this whole ministry came to LA, and that's where the LA Dream Center is now. And that's kind of how I met my wife when she's going to school in Malibu. And then we met and we were friends. And we ended up going to the LA Dream Center, working with some people that had disabilities. And we got married, man. It's been 30 years now this May that we've been married.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I think about it, like, I remember when me and my wife first got engaged, of just some, top tier family counselors on the radio just basically saying that the statistics for me and Sarah to make it are pretty slim, but it's pretty cool. We rely on each other quite a bit, me and Sarah. We have had to work kind of for everything that we've gotten. The Lord's blessed us though.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you have a family?
Yeah, I have a wife, Sarah. I have a daughter named Sydney, and
A dog.
And a dog, yeah.
Named Leo.
Named Leo. But I also have three guys that are like my brothers, man, because I've owned and operated a group home for people who have disabilities for over 25 years.
Yeah. Big heart.
Yeah.
And you work with them.
Yeah. But it's more of a blessing being with them sometimes than me, helping them. They've done a lot for me. Yeah.
I know you've done a few different ministries. You've been involved in kids ministries, and
Yeah.
you've been involved in other disabilities like wheelchair ministries.
Yeah.
And so I remember us talking earlier. You've kind of had a heart through since you got saved. You've kind of had a heart of like, God, what can I do?
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
and I remember, every time you're always asking God, what can I do? And you even said with your wife, there was, I was trying to remember the conversation we had, but this is when you were dating, I think in college. You're like, what could we do? But it just seems like that's always been something that you prioritize is God, what can we do?
Yeah,
And it's amazing to see the blessing that has followed um, from working hard and continuing to follow his direction that he's giving you.
I've always gone to church, not to go to church, but to serve the church. So ever since I got saved, I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of big things and a lot of big ministry things, and I don't know. God, I feel, has given me the ability to work with people, and I've never really gone into it of what I can get from church. It's been more, what I can do. I've been blessed, man. I've had a lot of people help me through different situations, and me learning how to be faithful and just to do my craft, and just to kind of like, just showing up and being reliable. And I've always had the heart to give. I don't want to really get into it, but I've had a lot of people like help me a lot. So if I don't do that, I just think that it's not.
So you're giving back from all the people that have helped you.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, why not?
Right. And your comment on church, that you go to church to serve the church, not to be served, reminds me of John F. Kennedy's famous quote. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've taught my kid that too. I mean, I got my daughter's pretty awesome, and she's good. I've been blessed with a great daughter, and she just kind of graduated early, and then she's going to Bible school online, and she's trying to figure out what she wants to do. She works at my wife's law firm right now. My wife is an attorney, and she owns and operates her own law firm, and that was just a lot of things that we've been able to do by just working hard.
Where did you get your inspiration for how you wanted your family to be? You said you listened to a little bit of like
major counselors,
like counselors on the radio. Was there anything else that you looked at and you saw and you wanted to resemble, or other people? Did you have a lot of people speaking in your life about how you wanted to raise your kids? Or
no,
it was.
I just didn't. I love my mom and dad and everything that they've done for me. My dad, big time, but I just didn't want to repeat what I went through with my mom.
Yeah.
And it's funny now because my daughter's like, "You're messing me up. You're messing me up." I'm like, "Dude, I'm far from messing you up, man. You should have seen how I got messed up."
Yeah.
But no, like I just had the desire of just, that I wasn't going to repeat history. Yeah. It was just a few people spoke into my life about chains being broken, and that generations would be changed, and my dad, like, after my dad rededicated his life, it's pretty amazing. Like when I first got saved, it wasn't just me that got saved. Next door neighbor, he got saved at a different church. And it was pretty radical, actually, and the neighborhood was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" type of thing. He wasn't as radical as me and my brother, just the mischief of us doing all kinds of things to our neighbors.
Had a little revival going on there.
Had a little revival, yeah. The crazy thing is that my dad, he rededicated his life, and my sister, she rededicated her life, or she actually got saved. But the crazy thing was my brother. So my brother, the biological kid to my parents, he's awesome. I love my brother, and he kind of had asthma when he was younger, and crazy thing was he would go and have a great time at my dad's house on the weekends because my mom and dad were divorced, right? But he would come home sick every Sunday. And he'd fake it a little bit, but he wasn't really. And I remember just being so frustrated with my brother. And so time was kind of tough between me and my brother. I remember one time I was just so chubby, I could never catch him to beat him up. And I remember like from just, I don't know, up to no good and just doing, and then, but me losing some weight, obviously, from doing drugs. I was actually fast enough to catch him actually one time. And like, I actually gave it to him a few times fighting and just, I had to take a lot of, I've taken a lot of anger out on people. It was not that I was like a tough person or anything like that, but just growing up with a birthmark on my face, I had to defend when people would make fun of me. There was times where I deserved to get my butt kicked, and I did multiple times, But with my brother, we kind of grew up not liking each other. And he had his set of friends, and I had my set of friends, and we kind of had the same friends at certain times. But I remember I got saved, and my brother, man, he was pretty set up. He actually, he got hit by a car when he was like 4 years old, coming out of the back of the ice cream truck. And I remember a dentist hit my brother who was drunk, and my brother like really got hurt, man. He was in a cast for like 9 months. Broke his arm, his leg, and he was pretty messed up. But he actually, my mom invested some money for him from a settlement that my brother got. The crazy thing is my brother, man, he just started partying. He got married kind of early. He had a house that was like paid off. Had like $100,000 in the bank. He was like 18 years old, man. And he ended up losing it all and living in a storage unit with a bar set up in it. And I remember there'd be times before he lost his house, when I got saved, I'd try to go find him, witness to him. One time he was hiding up in a tree. He was all bloody, all messed up from running from the cops, because they would like steal like copper mains from like these big industrial buildings in LA and Orange County. And they would just scrap the metal and go buy drugs. And that's kind of like what my brother was kind of into. And I remember, I think, I don't know which way this went. I used to know, but my brother went to jail for crystal meth. And I remember him calling me and asking me, hey, do you think your church in LA could help me? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, you really want to come? He's like, yeah. And so he got out, he moved to Los Angeles and went into the discipleship program. And he's been a youth minister for 27 years after that.
Wow. Mike, it sounds to me like you wanted to change some things in your life, and you needed to change some things in your life. A couple things that I am observing. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. The people you hang out with make an important impact on your life. So choose your friends wisely.
Yeah.
And the other one was you were aware of God's hand on your life all along, and at some point you had to humble yourself and say, yeah, this is what I want.
It was, but I was kind of clueless during that whole time of what God was doing. But he would get my attention multiple times, and it wasn't. It was just amazing.
Whether he blew you over in the wind, or whether he killed the plant, or the plant died
or like so many other different things of just giving money to different projects and getting blessed in this certain way. Or God's been faithful through everything.
Well, what's the call to action, Sam? There's a lot to take away from that.
There's a lot to take away, yeah.
But I would say a big call to action for to me, my takeaway is the biggest thing that I love that you said is that you go to church to serve, and that you always look
That's huge.
For you always look for how you can give and how you can sow. And I think that is the biggest takeaway for me, because I think having that heart, there's nothing the Lord can't do with you with that heart.
Yeah.
And And if you feel like you're getting chased after by God, like if you're experiencing some of these things, maybe it's time to go to church and give your life to Christ or rededicate your life.
Yeah, listen to podcast number 6 about the church.
Yeah, so I would say a couple of takeaways would be, if you're not in church, if you're running from the Lord, and take a step back and humble yourself in front of the Lord and see what he could do with you. And then step 2, I think for me is how can you serve in every situation? Ask yourself, what can I do? What can I do?
Beth listens to a lot of podcasts, listens to a lot of people, a lot of input. She's just hungry to grow. And one of the quotes that I remember she shared with me, of the many quotes, one of the quotes was, if God can get something through you, he'll get it to you. In other words, if God can get money through you, he'll get you money. And Mike, it sounds like to me, you want to give in many ways, your time, your talent, your whatever God gets to you, and you're willing to do that. And that's an example, personal example right here, first-hand example of that principle that she heard. So I want to thank you for coming on and sharing, and I think we'll probably have to have you back for more stories in the future.
A lot more stories.
Yeah, we've enjoyed your time, and we value it. So thank you for coming on, Mike.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Have a good week.